All right, gang, we are live. Come on in, one and all. Great to see you guys here. All right, we already have a really nice crowd here, guys. Danny, Ellen, John, Michael, Nikki, Derek, Julie. Great to see you guys. Come on in. Let's go, Brandon. That's right, Keith. We are live. Come on in, one and all. Great to have you here. Let me know if the sound's all right, as always. I never quite know, but it looks like all is well. It's a live stream Friday, a wonderful way to just round off our week in this crazy and nutty world. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button if you haven't already done so. We got so much to talk about today with regard to the desperation of the J6 committee and Biden's free fall. And I think in many ways they're both related, and we're going to talk about that relationship today. The Biden regime is imploding, and the J6 committee is collapsing in terms of any kind of any semblance of plausibility at this point. The amount of people that are coming out and just talking about how pathetic this committee is racking up as we speak. I'll show you some of them in due course. It's quite beautiful. So come on in, one and all. It is Live Stream Friday. I am your host, Dr. Steve. Your perpetual optimist, your personal patriot professor, helping to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and insane and turbulent times. Again, so if you have not already done so, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Super Chat is live, so if you want to ask me your questions, you just throw in a quick Super Chat, and we're going to compile all the questions and ask them or I'm going to answer them at the end. We'll be talking today about the utter desperation of the January 6th committee. You're not going to believe who they just subpoenaed. I mean, it's utterly, talk about desperation. We're going to see the latest on Liz Cheney's poll numbers. I think there's only one person in the country who has lower poll numbers than Joe Biden, and I guess you can guess who that is. Embarrassing doesn't even come close to it. And we're going to see how the rats in the Biden regime are beginning to flee the ship. They are recognizing that this gig is over. Of course, all your questions at the end. Great way to wrap up a wonderful week. First, gang, if ever there were a time to invest in the age-old reliability of gold and silver, and I'm a practitioner of this, it is now. And no one, absolutely no one, makes investing in gold and silver easier and more strategic than our good friends over at Goldco. Gang, they are one of us. They are patriots who are passionate about keeping your savings intact with the trustworthiness of gold and silver. And just to show you how dedicated they are to getting your savings secured, if you click on that link below right now, if you take that plunge, they're going to give you up to $10,000 in free silver when you open up an account. Have you ever heard of an offering like that? It is so awesome. They're one of us. Of course, they're patriots. We take care of each other. But it is a limited time offer, so don't wait. Click on that link below, or you can go to my special website, turleytalkslikesgold.com, and I most certainly do, and just find out how trustworthiness gold can keep your savings safe here. So, gang, support them. They're absolutely wonderful. All right, gang, let's dive right into here. So, as we round off this week, we've got, I think, two major stories that complement one another in terms of how they explain each other. They're basically, in effect, metaphors for each other. So, one story can be seen all the clearer through the prism of the other story, and that's what I want to explore with you today. I want to explore with you the downfall and effect of the J6 committee and how desperate they've become. And then I want to look at, in terms of my stack of stuff, my Russia stack of stuff, right, the headlines here, I want to look at the imploding Biden regime and take a look at what they both have to do with each other, okay? So let's start with the January 6th committee here. And, of course, when we're talking about J6 committee, we're talking about Liz Cheney's reason for being. All right, if there were no Jan 6 committee, Liz Cheney would have no reason on the planet to be in the public eye. But unfortunately for her, that public eye is beginning to squint very, very tightly. It's becoming widely reported that yesterday's hearing, that was their third public hearing, yesterday's hearing, I love this, was so tedious. It was so boring. It was so utterly dull that NBC News' Lester Holt had to come on, interrupt the viewing, interrupt the live broadcast, and announce that NBC was ending the live broadcast of the hearing, I kid you not, to air instead the U.S. Open golf tournament. Okay, I know you golfers out there are getting mad. I mean no disrespect. I promise. I mean no harm, no disrespect, but Lester Holt gets on television and he interrupts these graveyard of hearings with, we're going to have to end our coverage of this January 6th hearing on the NBC network. My colleagues and I will continue our coverage on the hearings over on our streaming platform, but for 99% of you, for everyone else, U.S. Open golf begins momentarily. So this committee hearing was so pathetically dreary, so pathetically boring, that they had to, as a substitute, to actually try to give you a thrill, they had to go to the most boring sport on television. Now, again, I do not mean any insult to you golf fans out there. God bless you guys. I've got family. I've always tried golf, and I suck at it. I'm terrible. God bless you guys. I have family members who are big-time golfers. They can watch golf for hours. No question. I got you. We do have to admit your viewing habits are, shall we say, an acquired taste. You know, when I was doing my show prep, as Rush would say, when I was doing my research today, I did come across a 2018 YouGov study that found that golf was considered by far the most boring sport to watch on television. 70% of respondents said golf was the most boring sport. To take solace there, 60% said American football was the most boring as well. And thank you, General Hydra. I'm going to get to those. Yes, how many rhinos are out of power? We're going to talk about that. We will talk about that at the end. Remember, our super chat is on if you want to ask your questions. We're going to be compiling them, and I'll be answering them at the end. So interestingly, American football came in at 60%, and it just beat out cricket by 1 point, if I recall. So anyway, there you go. No offense intended, but the irony, the utter irony that the J6 committee is so mind-numbingly boring that NBC News thought the otherwise single most boring sport on television would in fact be a reprieve, a respite from the Liz Cheney-led monotony. I mean, that says it all right there. As I'm sure you all know, that the ratings are in for the January 6th sham show, and they were abysmal. It was, by all accounts, an absolute dud, that Thursday night premiere. Now, keep in mind, you had wall-to-wall marketing for this thing, 24/7 on all the news channels leading up to it. They hired the ABC marketing executive to give it some panache. You had every single cable news and networks news channel, for the exception of Fox, to their credit, covering this monstrosity live. And they still couldn't pull in ratings comparable to what nightly news gets every single evening. And that's because every poll out there shows, every single one shows that the people have moved on. They don't care about J6 anymore. They did at one time. There was definitely some concern in the couple of weeks following, but that's gone. What are people concerned about today? Are they concerned about a riot in the Capitol that happened 18 months ago? Or are they concerned about gas prices that have reached a national average of over $5 per gallon? They've doubled, yes, doubled in the last year since Biden took office. For many, that translates into $100 fill-ups at the pump. Are they concerned about record high inflation eating away at their savings, right? And make sure to click on that link and work with Goldco to protect your savings. Are they concerned about the imminent recession on the horizon? Are they concerned about the unprecedented food shortage and baby formula shortage, 15,000 migrants approaching our southern border, violent crime and homicide rates surging at unprecedented levels, all in Democrat-run, Democrat-monopolized cities throughout the nation. Are they concerned about the possibility of an impending famine? I mean, does anyone honestly, and that's the key word there, honestly believe that, well, maybe 45, all right, I don't mean to be insulting, but maybe 45-year-old single women who give right now Biden a 60% approval rating. Besides them, does anyone else actually honestly believe that people are concerned about what happened 18 months ago in the Capitol? The J6 committee is literally nothing less than a bizarre burlesque theater. Literally nothing less. I mean, they're a clown show. And a very bad one at that. For heaven's sakes, even the ultra-leftists over at NBC tacitly admitted that when they switched to something they thought would be far more interesting, which was the single most boring sport on the planet, as a reprieve to this monotony. So all of this is to say that the J6 committee is getting desperate. And now they're trying to bring down a Supreme Court justice. Did you hear about this? This is how desperate they become. I got on my stack of stuff here. That's right. Ginny Thomas. They're after Clarence Thomas now. They are so desperate. They are so grasping at finding any semblance of relevance here that they're coming after Ginny Thomas, the wife of Clarence Thomas. I kid you not, in the headlines today. This here is from the Washington Times. House January 6th committee requests Virginia Ginny Thomas meet with lawmakers. So now they want to bring down Clarence Thomas, right? The House J6 committee sent Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas's wife, Virginia Ginny Thomas, a letter requesting that she meet with lawmakers after news broke earlier this week that she had communicated with attorney John Eastman, who pushed to overturn the 2020 election. Mrs. Thomas exchanged emails with Mr. Eastman, who argued former Vice President Mike Pence could have overturned the 2020 election results. She told the Daily Caller she looked forward to talking with lawmakers. So now they're trying to take down Clarence Thomas. I mean, this is funny. They're so pathetically desperate. And then on top of all that, you got the chairman. We reported on this earlier this week. The chairman of the J6 committee coming out and publicly admitting that the committee is not going to be making any criminal referrals. And that includes Donald Trump. They're not making any criminal referrals to the Justice Department. Here it is, NBC News, J6 committee will not make any criminal referrals. Chairman says, the chairman of the committee has actually come out and said he has no plans to make any criminal referral of President Trump or anyone else to the Justice Department. He said, so ultimately this isn't going anywhere. He came out and said, we're going to let the people decide in November. To which everyone in the lamestream media, of course, everyone and Liz Cheney are all coming out and saying, well, what the hell is the whole point of all this? What is this? What's the point? If it's not to bring down Trump, what are we doing here? This is a bigger waste of spending than the $40 billion that we sent to Ukraine. Every time I say that, it just hurts. $40 billion all going up in smoke. So obviously more and more voices are coming out and calling this J6 committee to be what it is. It's a total sham. The latest is Alan Dershowitz. He's jumping on the bandwagon here. Alan Dershowitz slams Pelosi's Jan 6 committee as modern-day McCarthyism, says everyone should ignore it. My namesake, Jonathan Turley, was on Fox. Turley on Kilmeade Show. Jan 6 committee, not even trying to look like a true investigation. Constitutional scholar says hearing lacked authenticity without more Republican leaders. And that's a huge critique that's coming. Robert Barnes, who's a big-time lawyer, he's saying the same thing. He's actually going so far as to say the committee isn't even really legal. It's not even valid. There's no proportionate representation of the Republican minority. The Republican Party, Andy McCarthy, the Republican leader, he wasn't allowed to appoint their own members. It was just a sham. It's just a sham kangaroo court that's been commissioned to do Nancy Pelosi's bidding. Nothing more. Everyone sees it. Again, everyone except those 45-year-old single women who give Biden single college-educated women. I'm remembering the poll that gave Biden 60% approval ratings. Trump did nothing in the end. Absolutely nothing. More and more people are coming out and saying that Trump did absolutely nothing wrong, nothing worthy of any indictment. And this chairman is now admitting it, right? They're saying the silent part out loud. They are not going to indict Trump. That's what they're saying at this point. I know they could go full woke wacko and try to do something like that, but it doesn't look like Merrick Garland or the FBI are going to be involved in this at any point. So when all is said and done, what on earth is really going on here? What's happening here? Again, just if you just joined us, as a reminder, make sure you do click on that link below. We're talking a little bit about the historic trustworthiness and reliability of gold and silver. No one makes investing in gold and silver easier than our good friends over at Goldco. They are patriots. They're a patriot gold company. They specialize in helping you find out how you can protect your retirement with the trustworthiness of gold and silver. So make sure to click on that link below. And if you do that today, they're going to give you upwards of $10,000 in free silver when you open up an account. They're amazing. Click on the link below or go to my own webpage, turleytalkslikesgold.com, and find out how the trustworthiness of gold can keep your savings safe. All right, so what is going on here? What's happening? What everyone needs to understand here, which I think is so absolutely essential to get, is that the gap, what we're seeing happen right before our very eyes, is the gap between the gulf, forget gap, the gulf, right? The unassailable gulf between the permanent political class on one side and the people on the other has become wider than ever before. What we're seeing here is a J6 committee that exists for no other reason than to pursue and promote the values, interests, and concerns of the permanent political class. The attack on the Capitol, as far as they're concerned, the attack on the Capitol, again, 18 months ago, was an attack on them. That's how they see it. It was an attack on them. And an attack on the permanent political class is, according to the propagandists in the mainstream media, lamestream media, I should say, is by definition an attack on democracy, justice, fairness, rule of law, blah, 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 blah. Everything else be damned. Everything else be damned. Inflation, gas prices, border implosion, food shortages, recession, stagflation, eroding savings, all of that be damned. All of that be damned if the values, interests, and concerns of the permanent political class held up by the billionaire class are at stake. And so what we're seeing here is a widening gap between the concerns of the people and the concerns of the permanent political class, such that the alienation of the political class away from real life and real concerns experienced by voters, by the people, has never, ever been more stark. And if you want to see proof of that, all you got to do is take a look at Liz Cheney's polling numbers. Now, according to the latest poll, we're talking this week, Liz Cheney's Republican opponent, Harriet Hageman, so this is for the Republican primaries coming up in August. They're so late in Wyoming, but Wyoming, it's whoever gets the Republican nomination wins, because they vote with a Republican margin of, what, 40% or so. I think it's almost 60-70% Republican. But, yeah, 70% Republican with 40% margin, 30% Democrat. According to the latest poll, Harriet Hageman is beating Liz Cheney, you ready for this, by 30 points. 56 to 26%. There's another fellow, Bouchard, who's in there, is almost getting about 10%. All right. Liz Cheney, right now, among Republicans in Wyoming, has a 26% support level. 26. 3 out of 4 Republicans despise her. Again, that's lower than Biden's approval. Again, if you were trying to find someone unfortunate enough to have lower approval than Joe Biden, there it is. It's Liz Cheney. She's down 30 points to her opponent in the primaries. Liz Cheney has a war chest, if I recall, upwards of nearly $10 million, all coming from liberals, all coming from leftists and neocon Bushites. All right? Harriet Hageman has, what, a few $100,000, but it doesn't matter. Now, how can this be, if you think it through now? How is this possible? How can this be? Because according to the mouthpiece, according to the propaganda wing of the permanent political class, the legacy media, right? According to them, Liz Cheney is Winston Churchill. She's a leader's leader. She is precisely the kind of hero that this nation needs in such a dark time like this, where democracy is at stake. She's fearless. She's principled. She has an integrity without equal. And all of you in Wyoming, all of you knuckle-dragging hicks, all you good citizens of Wyoming should be honored to have such a virtuous giant like Liz Cheney representing you. That's what the Washington Post is saying. That's what the New York Times is saying. That's what CNN is saying whenever they feel like addressing you. But you see, more and more people recognize that's just burlesque theater. They recognize that the media is part of this kabuki theater of the permanent political class. Again, we talk about it a lot on this channel. It's technically known as virtual politics, where the narratives that govern our political life are actually scripted by what are called political technologists. And those political technologists, of course, occupy the boardrooms of CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and the Washington Post. They are political propagandists that deliberately script out the political narratives that govern Washington, D.C., and they're supposed to be influencing you. Right? They use a technique called framing, which is the narratives that they use to, they don't push news, they push narrative. It's the narratives they use to frame all the events that happen. And then that's supposed to prime you. Priming is the technique the media uses to try to influence your dispositions, your inclinations, your opinions on the day's events, right, that have been shaped by the narrative. And then that helps the media to set the agenda, and that's where you get agenda setting theory. So it's that 3-step process of framing, priming, and agenda setting that the media uses as political technologists to in effect mold you and manipulate you into thinking a particular way about politics. There's just no way around that. That's how the media works. And you're supposed to comply with that. And you're not. When you look at Cheney's poll numbers, obviously you are not complying with that political technology, that virtual politics. You're not being primed. And then what the media is forced to do, and you all know this, then the media is forced to rewrite the script in such a way that has these horrible ogres that are trying to bring down democracy. And, of course, that's you. Because according to these narratives spun out of the boardrooms, the Times and the Post and CNN and the like, you're dangerous because you refuse to comply with their virtual politics, right, with their political technologies. You're refusing to comply with the narratives that are framing the day's events to prime you towards favorable sentiments towards liberal policies. So therefore, now you're a threat to democracy because democracy has been redefined according to the narrative, according to those who write the narrative better, right? Whatever left-wing activists disguised as journalists in the legacy media support and advocate. That's democracy. And your compliance is required. Otherwise, you're a threat to democracy. Now, obviously, the exposing of this fraud, this kabuki theater, isn't just happening to the J6 committee and Liz Cheney. It's happening to the entire Biden regime as well. The more we look at what's happening here, the more we have to conclude that the Biden regime really is basically collapsing. They're in a free fall, and there's just no saving it at this point. Again, there's going to be all kinds of political technologists trying to spin a narrative, right? It's all Putin, it's all Putin, it's all Putin, but nobody's buying it. Here's the latest Fox poll. When asked if you approve of Biden's handling of inflation, did you get the nut? You want to take a guess at what his approval rating is with inflation? The number one issue, by the way, because they put gas prices in there. Number one issue, 21% approval. 73% disapprove. 21%. By the way, I want to meet that 21%. I just have to probe their worldview and poke them with this. Again, I think we're dealing with the 45-year-old college indoctrinated women who are giving Biden a 60% approval rating right now. All told, when given a generic ballot question, Republicans hold a 19-point lead in the poll on which party better handles inflation and rising prices, with 55% picking Republicans versus 36% preferring Democrats. Wow. Again, the only worst poll I could think of is a Liz Cheney poll. So, and this is a Fox poll, keep in mind, that I've got here. That's a Fox poll. Fox polls tend to be skewed to the left. I have no idea why. I don't know why they farm out their polling to left-wing outlets. Fox, their polling outlets and their election coverage obviously is farmed out to left-wing activists. Fox polls are the ones that had Trump losing by like 25 points, right, back in 2020. It was just, they're disastrous. So if that's the case, I mean, Biden is imploding here. And so we're beginning to see the rats flee the ship. Look at this from ABC News. The Great Resignation reaches White House with massive staff turnover. Again, this was not supposed to be happening. But you've got staff members after staff members resigning from the Biden regime. This is not supposed to be happening. Not according to the far-left activists disguised as journalists. Remember, this is all Putin's fault. This isn't poor Joe Biden. Old Joe Biden, he can't control gas prices. Old Joe Biden can't control baby formula shortages. Old Joe Biden can't control inflation. It turns out it's actually Vladimir Putin that controls all these things. Who would have known? Wow. Talking about being Lord of the world, right? It's not working. The J6 committee and the Biden regime, both being propped up by propaganda, are being called out by more and more voters for what they really are. They are both shams. They are both frauds. They're both part of the same sick, burlesque comedy that nobody buys anymore. Again, they get wall-to-wall, 24/7 glamorous coverage by the mainstream media, and yet nobody buys it. I think, in the end, what we are seeing is not just the collapse of the committee and not just the implosion of Biden. I think in many respects we're seeing the annihilation, as it were, of the permanent political class as a whole, with the lamestream media heading it all, heading the fall. The whole thing is falling apart. We don't buy the sham committee. We don't buy the sham regime. And why don't we buy it? Because first and foremost, we don't buy the propaganda. So the whole thing is falling apart right before our very eyes. I think we're going to see the sham committee end in a whimper. In fact, the Republicans are already talking about in their takeover in November that they may end up taking over the committee and then start throwing out their own subpoenas against Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. That'll be beautiful to see. I think Biden's poll numbers will continue to implode, and they're in a free fall. I don't think they've hit their floor yet. And I think the trustworthiness of the media will continue to implode as well. So I think we're seeing in many respects the fall of the entire permanent political class regime. All right, gang, that does it for me. Let's go to your questions here. Let me get my Josh. You want to send over my questions here? Thank you for all of you who have been putting in these super chats and asking your questions. It's going to be really, really cool to chat with you guys. So come on, Josh. Where are them? Give me them questions. I got one that just came in. I can give that one. Panda Santi, do you feel we could see a 14-year Republican run between the midterms and the next 3 presidential elections with the disaster Democrats have created? It feels like Biden has united America against him and these psychos. I love it, Panda Santi. Let's see. So you're talking, okay, 14-year Republicans, the 12-year presidential plus the 2 for the midterms. Yeah, I do. Absolutely. I mean, Steve Bannon is talking. He's going beyond that. Steve Bannon is using what's called fourth turning theory, that he thinks we can have a supermajority for the next 100 years. I did a video on that you might want to check out. I did that in detail yesterday. Gave you all the data behind that prediction. Yeah, but Steve Bannon thinks that we're looking at possibly the next 100 years of dominance, because you're talking about 14 years, a 14-year cycle, and just 3 presidential elections. He's drawing from a theory that sees history moving in 20-year cycles according to every generation. A generation is basically 18 to 20 years. So every generation, there's a new group of 18-year-olds, as it were, coming of age, and they're ushering in a new generation. So every 20 years, you have these chapters, and then at the end, what the theory behind fourth turning is at the end of the 4th generation, the 4th series of these 20 years, it's 80 to 100 years. But after the 4th generation, there's always some kind of crisis that happens, some kind of turmoil, right? Some kind of turbulence and insanity, and then a massive political and economic paradigm shift happens that then governs for the next 80 to 100 years. It's basically taken as the new normal. And so the theory is that our current liberal globalist world began in 1946 with the end of the World War II, and the so-called rules-based society came in with America and the EU. Back then just simply Europe, but eventually then the EU governing it and governing the new normal. That appears it's coming to its 80-year mark. It looks like it is imploding, and we're seeing a new paradigm coming in, which I'm arguing is a new, what I call conservative age, meaning traditionalist age, where the old myths and ancient civilizations are all beginning to rise up again. So we're all going back to nation, culture, custom, tradition, tribe, civilization as the basis for the new world order. The old world order, ironically, which was referred to as New World Order, which was secular globalism, a one-size-fits-all political and economic system that was by its nature centralized to a very, very few corporate, global leaders, rulers overseeing the whole thing, irrespective of your culture, custom, and tradition. That's imploding. That's falling apart. So we may actually forget the next 14 years. We may be seeing, if this fourth turning cyclical theory is right, we may be seeing the next 100 years with Republican dominance. But I think the insanity speaks for itself. All right, General Hydra, how many rhinos are out of power? Yeah, we're getting them slow and sure. Again, it's going to take a paradigm shift. We're going to have to stop taking the Romneys and the Grahams and the Cheneys and so forth seriously. Again, up to 2018, they were still being taken seriously. And but now they're less so than ever. The paradigm shift is clearly to the patriot right. Mad World, live in Wyoming. Will try my best to vote Liz out. I don't think you're going to have any problem with that, Mad World. And thank you for that. Yeah, we love our Wyoming patriots to get rid of this crazy nut. Utah patriots, you got to step up to the plate in 2024 and get rid of Romney. I mean, that's just that's an insult to all the values that we stand up for. General Hydra, again, there is different politics YouTube like Real American and Red Eagle Politics, and even some live I know is liberal. Live I know is liberal. Hive Mind and Jimmy Dore. Do you anything of them or hear of them? Ooh, okay. Let me try my best with that one, Jenner. So it seems to me you're talking about liberal or leftist populism versus rightist populism, and how they do have significant crossover, like we're seeing with Jimmy Dore or Russell Brand, for example, or even I guess technically. Well, I think what we have to understand is when all is said and done, I was thinking Joe Rogan, by the way. If you're, I'm trying to get all my thoughts together. I think if you are talking about, it depends what paradigm you're operating from. It depends, you have a diamond, and depending on how you're turning it in the light, you're going to get different colors. So we all are emanating common colors, both on the populist right and populist left, when it comes to the permanent political class. If our enemy, as it were, political enemy, is the globalist world order, so that's going to be basically DC and Brussels ruling the world and telling the world what it can and cannot do. It creates the rules that it requires all other nations to abide by. But as you guys know, if you're outside the United States doesn't necessarily abide by them, right? We fudge those rules all the time, as does the EU. So if that's our common enemy, then we're basically going to exemplify the same hue. We're going to the populist left and populist right, Jimmy Dore and Tucker Carlson are basically going to be pushing the same thing. When you get into the actual nuances of what we support and what we are defending, you'll see a Venn diagram, if you know what a Venn is, two circles that overlap in the middle. There's going to be a lot of things we support. Populists tend to be very pro-government. They tend to be very pro-protectionist, economic nationalism, and so on. But what you'll find with the populist left is generally they're a lot more secular. And that's going to be one of the key areas where we're going to start diverging. The nationalist right, the nationalist populist right, is culturally very conservative. And so we don't want anything to do with any of this woke nonsense. We don't want anything to do with alternative lifestyles, all that sort of stuff. I mean, when I say we don't want anything to do, I mean, there's going to be spectrums of that. Right, so Hungary, Poland, Russia, Georgia, Bulgaria, Eastern Europe in general, they're gonna treat alternative lifestyles with a bit of a spectrum there. Some will be more tolerant than others, that kind of stuff. Here in the United States, our default ethos is libertarian. When all's said and done, we're not libertarian in terms of government per se, but we're libertarian in terms of ethos. For right or for wrong, that's just default. And the default is, as long as you're not hurting anyone, and as long as you're not affecting anyone else, you can do whatever you want. Nobody cares. So that's why gay marriage succeeded in the United States, at least just in terms of sentiment. That's why gay marriage succeeded, and this is why transgenderism isn't. Because transgenderism is forcing it is forcing people to comply with it. It is affecting other people. Just ask female athletes, right? So that's the key difference there. And I just think in the end, the populist left is different than the populist right. And the populist left tends to be much, much more secular, much more hostile to religion than is the populist right. So that's the key. That's why I tend to like Jordan Peterson, because I found Jordan Peterson a fantastic bridge between those two, being so religious in his symbolic universe, in his psychotherapeutic universe without being dogmatically religious in terms of demanding people convert and so on? Great question. Very good. Adam Bowman, what do you know about these 4 Navy captains that were relieved of command last week? Don't know anything. I have to look at that, Adam. That would be very, very concerning. So, Stephen Connors, hey, Stephen. What are your thoughts about Biden declaring a public health emergency over Roe v. Wade being overturned? I think it'll get shot down by SCOTUS. I think it'll be immediately challenged in the court. It'll be an EO, executive order. It'll get immediately challenged. It'll get held up from being enforced, and it'll eventually get overturned by Roe v. Wade. Hopefully they'll expedite it, because if they overturn Roe v. Wade, there is no way they're going to allow. If they believe, if the judicial philosophy was that it was wrong, it was an inherent futility within the American cultural and social and political system to be the only Western nation that had the abortion issue settled by judicial fiat. Everybody else dealt with it. Every other Western nation dealt with it legislatively. And we were dealing with it legislatively prior to that, right? But the very fact, prior to Roe v. Wade, the very fact that they found that to be a weakness, a radical weakness in American political, economic, and social life, that this very contentious issue was solved by judicial fiat. How much more will they see executive fiat being every bit as illegitimate, every bit as weak? So I think that's what's going to happen there. Jennifer Greer, thank you for all the videos. So thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, it's been an interesting week. Check out the one, very fascinating one on the Russian Orthodox Church getting sanctioned by Britain. Very, very fascinating dynamics there in terms of the rise of a new post-secular world. CLP, you don't think what's happening in South America being influenced by socialist guerrilla and political activists can be a doom scenario for America when China is already in their backyard? We'll have to see, CLP. Sorry, Mitchell, I skipped yours. And Jay, these moves, sorry. We'll have to see. I used to believe China wanted to be the new globalism and be the new world order and want to control the world. I don't believe that now. The more studies I'm reading, the more I'm seeing that they're deferring back to civilization and culture. They certainly want to take over a world, a map, probably the biggest part of the world map, which is the Sinosphere, as it were, the Asiatic countries, South Korea and so forth. Not take over literally, but be the dominant core state of that region. Japan, of course, I have family in Japan, so very up on that. Philippines, all that sort of stuff. So we're dealing with the Southeast Pacific. They want to be the dominant player. But Russia and India do provide a bit of a Western buffer of China's influence. India is predicted to have an economy the size of the United States by 2050. Russia has decoupled itself from globalism, being the first civilization, post-globalist civilization state, and its sphere of influence is going to be about 300 million. So when you're combining both India and Russia, and they're very close, that should limit Chinese influence, but we'll have yet to see. Yes, they're going to be everywhere, no question, but that doesn't mean, just like the United States in the new world that's emerged, in the new conservative world, it's always going to be a very powerful country. It's always going to be a very rich country. It's just not going to have the kind of pull that it used to have internationally. It's just those days are gone, and we're already seeing it now. Very good. JAEUFM, after the midterms, I'm waiting for a counter investigation of this investigation. Those involved, they're already talking about they're going to take over J6 and start issuing their own subpoenas. Republicans are. Mitchell Ryan, what do you recommend we stock up on food? There you go for the coming fan. Go to any prepper website. They'll tell you exactly what you need to stock up for. They're amazing. Prepper websites are amazing. Lots of canned food. So that's what we're doing. We have to remember we tend to be the first generation, right, from our parents and our grandparents and so on. We tend to be the first generation to not stock up on food. Just as you should have a money surplus, you should have a rainy day fund for if your funds go depleting, so you need some financial reserves. You also want to have some food reserves as well. That's very important, just in case, something that preserves and the like. Danza, Eastern Orthodox eschatology, is it amillennialism? Oh my. Dansman, you're getting into some serious theology here. Is it amillennialism? Thoughts on Yakina Ardern? I love how she just cares just so much. She wakes up normies over there. I don't know too much about Ardern. I have to look. I've heard, I'm sure, wonderful things. I'll have to check. Eastern Orthodox eschatology does not fit into a post-Ah or pre-mill schema. This is my opinion. So you're going to, have to look at other people like Jay Dyer and others who've done excellent work in this stuff. I don't think it fits into a post-Ah or pre. Generally speaking, Eastern Orthodox eschatology is extremely triumphant. It sees, in many respects, I think you're seeing it right now being worked out in Ukraine via Russia. It sees a very triumphant Christianity, very triumphant church, backed by a triumphant, a protective state acting as Michael the Archangel. That's how the state is redeemed. It protects the church, and the church in turn protects the state from, like in this case, wokeism, the wokeism of the West. That would infect it otherwise. That's certainly how the Russians are thinking today. So it's very triumphant in that sense, very, very post-millennial. But it sees the human being, the ultimate purpose of a human being, as theosis, as divination, I forget. I always get those two mixed up. That's why I always go with theosis. The divining of the human person. The human person becomes immortal through the grace of Christ by the power of the Holy Spirit in the divine life animating every strand of DNA. So we can no longer die, no longer sin, and all that good news. But we do that through suffering, through the cross, through the way of the cross. And so that suffering is where you get the amillennialism, or even kind of a premillennialism, where no matter how triumphant the church is, the satanic warfare is always very, very powerful. And then there is a kind of pre-millennialism in that most Eastern Orthodox eschatology sees the Antichrist as a future event happening, taking over the world, making it horrible for however many years, and then and I've even read some eschatology, Eastern Orthodox eschatology believes in the rebuilding of the Jerusalem temple prior to Christ coming and all that kind of stuff. So it almost reads as premillennial. So it's a whole mixture into one. That's the way I would look at it. Tom Greer, do you see Biden lasting to the midterms? I don't know. More and more Dems are coming out saying he needs to step aside. Or at the very least announce he is not going to run. That was the big thing with Brett Stevens in New York Times. At least announce you're not going to run, so we can get our best and brightest out there campaigning. Obviously, it will not be Kamala Harris, because best and brightest are not the two words that are connected with her. So anyway, I don't know. We'll see, but I think the pressure's on for him to at least announce this. He's one and done. Nikki, I'm a huge supporter of Doug Mastriano. We need him in Pennsylvania. My worry is that Pennsylvania is going to try to do what they did in 2020. You think PA will be more on top of moving forward? That's the concern, Nikki. We'll have to see. That's the concern. Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are the big question marks there, aren't they? So we're just going to have to see and make sure that we employ as much as possible what's called the Steve Bannon precinct strategy. That's what we gotta do. That's what works so well for Glenn Youngkin in Virginia. All right, guys. I am running out of time here. I have an appointment at 1 that I have to get ready for. Let me zip through these. Spectre in the air. Dr. Steve just tuned in. Ultra Mag and Deplorable. Proud of it. Any chance Delaware can break the Dem stranglehold? Hi from Newark. Nope. No, I think Delaware's dead. There are some states that are dead right now. They're going to need resurrection, and I think Delaware's one of them. Just the demographics aren't there. Let's see. Vicky, can't wait till all these liars get what's coming to them. Love you, Steve. Keep up the great work. God bless you, Vicky. Right back at you. Michael Magyar, why not claim Mega MAGA t-shirt advertising 2. Why not claim mega? I don't quite know what that is, but yes, we do. But we do have. Let's see. Do we have a mega? Maybe we don't have a mega. We do need. We have the MAGA King. We have the all Ultra MAGA shirts. We have all kinds. Go check out our. Yes, but that's a good plug. If you like our really cool merch there, click on the link below and get something for yourself and for the patriots in your life, and support our channel and spread patriot hope far and wide. Nancy, few too many Parmesan cheese rocks for Hunter and the big guy. Hilarious. Westfield, depressing that with the worst gas price in the economy, a Fox analyst said, we'll barely see a red wave due to lots of gerrymandering. I think that's nonsense at this point. I think that's nonsense. The gerrymandering, in the end, worked in the Republicans' favor. Just take a look at, for example, what happened with DeSantis. I'll have to do a little follow-up on that, but the last I saw, even left-wing sites like New York Times were saying Republicans, just through gerrymandering alone, through the redistricting alone, have already picked up the seats they need in order to take over in November. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. General Hydra, talked about that. Bad Matam, greetings, Dr. Steve from the UK. God bless you, son. From across the pond. Looking forward to the Republicans taking out the trash come the midterms. Love to all patriots from Scotland. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And have a John Smith's in my honor, if you would. I think that's going to do it for us. I think we got them all in. All right, guys, I do have to run. I've got an interview at 1. So with that, guys, we had a great week. Check out some of the videos if you missed them. Everyone is primed to make sure we better understand this new conservative age that is rising, however much the globalist world is doing their best to stifle it. But it's not working. There's nothing they can do. All right, guys. Love you all so much. Have a wonderful weekend. And